everybody to Weird Growth, the podcast where we talk to founders about their strange and interesting journeys that they go on growing businesses. I'm Cam from Ammo Marketing, and we're really lucky to have Gabe Alves here with us today. G'day, Gabe.
How you going, Cam? Good
Yeah,
to be
very
here.
well. Good. Thanks for coming, mate. And look, you've got a really interesting story and some really interesting things that you've worked on in the past. It'd be great just to hear you. You know, what's your? How do you introduce yourself these days?
Oh, how do I introduce myself?
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Hard question, right?
You know when you have to fill in the thing in the airport slip and it says, what do you do as a job?
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't have a clue.
Yeah.
Just make something up.
International man of mystery.
Well, maybe I'll just give a little bit of background on how this started.
Please.
If you like.
Yeah.
So,
Well, actually, just tell us what you're up to now, and then we'll get into the story.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, the backstory.
So at the moment, I've got two startups.
Yep.
One is Trackmysubs. That's been around for about 3.5 years now. And then my second startup is called EXTAG, and it is polar opposites to Trackmysubs. It's a tool for the mining, oil and gas process.
Yep.
Very much our clients are the top end of town, the Chevron, BHPs, that level. And Trackmysubs, their customers are like end users, agencies, people sitting at home working from their office. So they're the two startups I've got running. Trackmysubs basically runs itself now,
Yep.
which is pretty amazing in itself. It takes very little effort. And EXTAG, I burn insane amounts of hours, and I'm on planes
And jet
going
fuel.
everywhere, and jet fuel and everything else. Yeah, so very exciting.
Love it. Well, mate, look, thanks again for coming along today. It's actually really nice to have you here. I'm a big fan personally of Trackmysubs.
And a customer.
And Ammo is a customer of
Yep.
Trackmysubs. That's very true. We use it for the agency. And I remember probably a year and a half ago, you did a talk at Morning Startup here in Space Cubed, and shared this really interesting story about how you grew that. So keen to dive into that. But I mean, let's talk about Trackmysubs first, and then
Yep,
it'd be great
sure.
to go into EXTAG as well. But
Yep.
tell us about what was the big problem that you were solving there.
So really what it was is that my wife's a graphic designer, and so she was doing some websites and doing bits and pieces, and she found that she was signing up to various tools. So whether it was with WordPress and plugins, and then mail systems for automatic mail outs and drip sequences and all sorts of stuff. And then we're having all these subscriptions to all these different things for every client. And we're putting them into a spreadsheet and then putting things into a calendar to try and remind us when they're going to be due. I mean, obviously, if you've got a client that is no longer your client and you're paying half of their subscriptions, you really want to know about that pretty quick, right?
For sure.
And so the issue was we just didn't have a tool for it. And it was driving us nuts with a spreadsheet and a calendar. And at the time, so my background is not software development. I'm not a software developer. I come from IT, but from infrastructure. And the first thing I did was there's got to be an app for this.
Mm.
And sure enough, there were a few apps out there, but there was an app that you could have on your phone, which was very, very basic. You could remind yourself you had a Netflix account and do bits and pieces.
It's a glorified alarm or something.
Yeah, and it was, you could free from the App Store, but it didn't really do the kind of organising and the kind of management of those and reporting that I really wanted. And then you had the other end of the scale, we had things like Truebill, which is based out of the US. But the way that they worked is they wanted access to your bank account. And they would go and trawl through all your your transactions and say, well, okay, great, this is what you're spending on. And I had a real problem with that. I just thought, I actually don't need to give you access to all my banking records so that I can have an easy tool to remind me about the stuff I'm already subscribed to.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing where you're the product.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, well, I know what I'm subscribed to. I just need something to manage them in a way that just makes it easy for me. I don't need someone to tell me what I'm subscribed to. I know that. So at the time, we I guess, in a strange moment, we thought, well, why don't we give this app building thing a go? How hard can it be, right?
How hard can it be?
So I thought about, I could just go and start teaching myself to code and maybe do that on the side. But through my IT infrastructure experience, I'd moved on for actually the tech work, and I'd just moved on to management and managing teams. And I also knew that if I got into the nuts and bolts of coding, I was going to be there forever. And in order to make a business and grow it, I need to be focused on the business, not how do I code this app. So I hired a uni student. He was in his third year uni, and I said,
This sounds dangerous, Gabe.
Oh, well, I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
Straight up.
So he had more idea than you, really,
Well,
with the technical side of things.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, he knew how to code. And I said to him, look, I've got this idea. Do you want to build this for us? I'll pay you. And I had a day job, and I said, I'll just pay you an hourly rate. Let's make this thing happen. And he was excited about it. And
Yeah, nice.
so we said, yeah, it's good. Do it. So 6 months later, we turned the app on and we started using it. And that was kind of August 2016.
So at that time, who did you think your perfect customer was?
Everybody.
Everybody.
I had this thing, subscriptions. Everyone has subscriptions. My customer is the world.
Yep.
Right?
And were you right?
No,
Why
furthest from.
Why not?
Well, knowing nothing about the app world, about marketing, about everything else, I just assumed, hey, I've got this great idea and everyone in the world's going to want it. And I'm going to be a multi-gazillionaire because everyone's going to pay me a couple of dollars a month. And you do the maths on the spreadsheet and you go, that's it, I'm going to kill it.
Right.
And then
we're going to get 10% of the global TAM, and we're going to be gajillionaires. Yeah.
That's right, yeah. And then you build it and you put it out there and you hear crickets. And you go, what happened? The world's broken. I thought this was all you had to do is just make an app and you turn it on and then everyone just comes and pays you money, right?
So at that moment, you've spent 18 months building...
No, 6 months.
6 months,
6
sorry.
months, yeah.
With your uni student building this product, and you're super excited and you go and launch it and there's crickets. How did that feel in that moment? What was it like?
Pretty shit. You go, oh, what have I done? How much money have I spent? What do I do now?
Yeah.
And I'll be the first person to say I don't know anything about marketing. And I didn't know anything about marketing. And so you start Googling stuff, right? How do I sell my app and how do I do this and do that? And you hear about all these buzzwords around SEO and anyway, I fought that for probably 6 months.
Yeah.
Trying to just figure this stuff out.
Yeah.
And until somebody told me, he says, you know what, you probably should get on a course or something. Go and do something out of the box and go and learn what you're trying to do.
Sure.
And so that's what I did. I actually signed up to an online course with a guy out of Canada.
Right. Yeah. Cool.
And I went through his course and paid him a couple of grand and went through lots and lots of videos and sort of dived in, and I learned a lot of the foundations and understanding of the different technologies.
Yep.
And then that's I started applying that. And at least I had some kind of structure then. And I also realised that that's why nothing that I'd done had ever worked, because there was no structure. There was no, you can't just build a Facebook ad and put it out there and expect it to work, right? So
yeah. And so I guess through that process, you started discovering that this is actually about the customers and how you're building something customer first.
Yep.
And so how did you find that process actually starting to reach your first customers?
Well, you get your first customers, family and friends,
right?
And they would sign up and, they'll give you the obligatory, no worries, we'll pay you for it. We'll support you, Gabe, pat on the back,
nice.
And then it just doesn't. And then you get a couple of randoms. Just because you're out there, you'll get some people who will randomly come across your site and you'll go, wow, I got to sign up this month. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But you just can't get that kind of methodical growth. And it wasn't until going through this where you got to start getting your messaging right. You got to understand what am I trying to sell here? Who am I selling it to? And where are those people? So where am I going to... Okay, I might get my message right, but I need to find out where they're hanging out so I can give it to them.
Yeah.
Because just spraying it out into the world's never actually going to work. You're going to get lucky.
So describe the process behind getting the messaging right.
So this has been a really... It's enlightening because I actually had the answer when I started, but it probably took me a year to figure out that I actually had the answer when I started.
Wow.
So if I think about that, I thought this tool was for everyone because everyone has subscriptions. And then as I'm going through it, we started getting the product out there. I started talking to customers. I tried to understand who my customers were, who were actually willing to part with money. And it turns out that the people who are willing to part with money for this tool is actually for the person that I built it for, which is my wife's graphic design business, right?
Which was you all along.
Which is
your wife all along.
And And if I think about it logically, I never had that issue before, even though I had Netflix and Stan and some other bits and pieces. I never had the issue to track my subscriptions before this particular problem. So, like, it's very, very clear in hindsight.
Yeah.
But when you start out, your brain goes in these different pathways and you go, I'm going to take over the world. How hard is this app business going to be? And it totally distracts you.
Yeah, that's human nature.
Yeah. And then I think probably one of the hardest things is actually recognizing that you get this kind of block where you think, if I reduce my audience, I'm going to leave customers out there and they're not going to use my product. But it's actually the opposite effect, that if you can focus your message in and you target your audience even better, as close as you can, you're going to be really, really successful for those people.
Yep.
Which means you'll get more of those people rather than less of a lot.
Yeah.
It actually works, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's so much more powerful to have a handful of super fans than a whole crowd full of people who are just lukewarm on what you're doing, for sure. Yeah.
And it flows on to the actual app itself. Because if you focus down to a very niche area of people who need it, you can focus your features to what they need. And if you have a very broad customer base, well, everyone wants features that are so broad that you can't possibly, develop for all of them. And then your app becomes so broad that it's kind of like, master of none. But it's okay for kind of most things, but
you just
not
end up
good
building
for
a great big enterprise like a Salesforce or something like that, which does all the bells and whistles. But
totally
right, yeah. So where's Trackmysubs at now?
So Trackmysubs now, it just takes care of itself. I literally spend no more than 1 hour a week on it.
How cool is that?
I've automated everything. It's all self-service, and the hour of work that I do is just from people who contact our support desk. And so I'll fire a few messages each week. Maybe someone wants to cancel and remove all their data. Fine, I go through and do that. But otherwise, it's totally self-service.
Congratulations, mate.
Yeah.
That is a success story. That's really cool.
It's really fascinating just watching it.
Yep.
And I'm not actually doing any marketing now. I'm not doing anything. I'm just letting it do its thing.
So you did add features over time to Trackmysubs.
Yes.
I was lucky enough to try out the very early version, and it was a really nice lean product even then.
The design was horrible.
Well, yeah, but the functionality was there, and it's actually good that the design was horrible at the start, because if you had it polished into perfection at the time, you might not have gotten where you did.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, what was the process behind adding features? How did you decide which ones to include and which ones to leave out?
At first, it was when someone asked for a feature, I had this burning urge. Oh no, I have to have this feature because they want it.
Someone's asked for it. I've got to make it happen.
I've got to make it happen.
Right.
And I think it takes there's a number of things that happen which takes a bit of kind of thick skin building. The ability to be able to say no, the ability to say, no, this feature doesn't fit with our core product, and be willing to accept that customer may go away, and be able to tell them, no, we're not going to build it, and then have them rant at you through whatever medium it might be.
Because as we've said, you're not all things to all people.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I had to really make that clear in my head about who this product was for, and accept the fact that I was willing to cut loose anyone who the product was not designed for.
Mm-hmm.
And
at the end of the day, they're not going to be paying or profitable customers anyway.
That's right.
I suppose, yeah.
But psychologically, it was very hard.
Sure.
Because I'm trying to build a business and
it's
going,
your baby.
Here's someone who wants to come and use my product, and I'm going to tell them no. But it's by getting that switch to go off in your head to go, this is actually perfectly fine.
Yep.
Having someone cancel and not use your product means that that's not for them, and they should actually go for somewhere else. And it's interesting just watching my own journey where when someone contacts me and asks for something and says, I want it to be able to do this, I feel super comfortable in telling them that my product's not for you. Here's another 3 or 4 products you should consider looking at. And it's very empowering.
Love it.
And for them to say, well, but they're not you. I'm like, yes, no, it's not you. But it's not for everybody.
Love it.
So go and find one that's better.
Yeah, good on you, Gabe. And so with Trackmysubs, the user base at the moment, is it in the thousands? Is it in the tens of thousands?
Yeah, so we're just about 13,000 now.
Incredible. Yep.
It's growing. We're probably growing now at close between 500 and 1,000 a month.
And how are those people finding it? How do they come across it?
So I get asked this a lot.
Yeah.
And
Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
Like I can.
You've just built a product which has its own organic
Yeah, and so
sort of reach out
it's
there.
interesting, and it's one of the things too. You start doing your SEO, you start writing blog posts and all these articles to try and get out there. You try and get other people to mention you in their articles, and you work hard. And then what I've realised that the most powerful thing that's happened is time. Is Trackmysubs has been around for now 3 years.
Yeah.
Which in the internet's actually quite a long time.
Yeah.
And I got a spreadsheet that I tracked all of my my competitors. And there was probably about 20, 25 competitors. And 2/3 of them no longer exist. And I've got this model that you just survive. If you survive long enough, you'll be successful.
Right.
And it's about being around. And that goes with all your rankings in Google. And if you're around long enough, when I had Mashable contact me the other day. Gabe, we want to do an article on you. Can I check the thing? We want to do this thing.
Oh, cool.
Oh, sure. And to have Mashable contact me 3 years ago, I would have been, oh my God, this is ridiculous. Whereas now it's just when you do a search for these things, there's enough places now that are backlinking to Trackmysubs. It's now considered a standard.
Yep.
There was Crunchbase did an article a month ago talking about Truebill, them raising another $5 million or whatever it was. And they compared it to Trackmysubs as one of the competing products of which they had no information on. There's no fundraising known about it, but they had obviously looked online and found, this is an app that does something similar.
Yep.
And that only happens because I've been around
Yep.
now. And I think that's been the biggest thing for me is you can't beat time.
And so do you have any plans for the future of Trackmysubs, or are you going to let it tick along and do the 1 hour a week?
Yeah, I'm just going to let it tick along for now.
Yep.
Do the 1 hour a week, and we do spend some dev work on it where we just focus on when there's particular features that I think can be really valuable for our set of customers, then we'll do it, and we'll do it as we deem it necessary.
Yeah.
And of course we've got constant bug fixes and support and all that sort of stuff that we do.
Yeah.
So I say it's 1 hour a week, but we've got dev work that goes on as well.
Yeah. And what's the one big sort of learning that you've come out of this journey that you would share with other founders who are just starting out with a direct to consumer type bit of software like what you've built?
I think the biggest learning for me is that don't believe the hype. There is so much in the startup world globally about these unicorns and these billion-dollar companies and, hey, I want to be the next Canva or whatever it might be. But the reality is that a startup or a piece of software is a business like any other. Mm-hmm. And most businesses will fail in the first 18 months. Mm-hmm. And if you can get to 5 years, you're going to be one of the rare ones. Yep. And if you actually treat your business, your piece of software, whatever, like any normal business, then you won't be disappointed, and you'll plan for the longer term. You'll plan, I want this business to be successful in 5 years or 10 years. And then you won't be, after 12 months, going, I'm a complete failure because my app hasn't taken over the world.
I'm not sitting on the Bahamas after 6 months and flying around in a private jet.
Exactly, because it's actually not the reality.
It's unrealistic.
And it's a complete... You see everybody, coming to Morning Startup or everyone else with these, the ideas and stuff. But it's just go and start a business and plan it like anything else. And take your time and prepare for that. And if you think you're going to be just doing it for 18 months, well, you're just going to set up yourself up for disappointment, really.
The big takeaway I have is you are probably one of the most customer-centric founders that I've come across. There's so many, people in the scenes that you're talking about where they're not really solving a problem for a set of customers. They've fallen in love with the idea of creating a product, and they want to solve the problem for themselves, but not to create a business necessarily.
Well,
so there's different motivations there.
I was having this discussion with someone just the other day who had an idea for an app, and one of the biggest things I struggled with is even though Trackmysubs solved the problem, most customers don't want to spend any thought on how to use an application. Mm. And there's all these points of value, these aha moments that you get when you use an application. You go, oh, that app's cool. Mm. I've got value for it. And then all of a sudden you're invested and you want to go further. But there is an enormous amount of effort, and that's probably the most effort I spent on Trackmysubs, is trying to understand where these moments of value are for the customer. And from the moment they sign up, how do I guide them through the use of that app to get to those moments so that they can understand that and without them using any brain power. Because the moment someone has to think and start working at it, they go, it's too hard, and they move on. And that was very, very, very difficult. And it just lots and lots of interviews with customers and trying to understand where it is and what would trigger them to move to the next step.
So the analogy that I use is kind of like trying to boil a frog.
Yeah.
If you dump a frog straight into hot boiling water, it's going to jump straight out. I assume I've never done it before, if the RSPCA is listening. But if you put a frog in a nice pot of room temperature water and slowly turn the heat up, it's going to stay there, and eventually you're going to have a nice cooked frog. And so what I really love about Trackmysubs is the first thing that you're asking people to do is just to share which subscriptions you have. You're not asking for an email address, you're not asking for a credit card or a phone number or anything like that. You're trying to get the user to that first point of value where they're seeing what's you're actually going to give them as quickly as possible.
It's an amazing amount of psychology involved. And understanding what the human psyche is and about commitment and what people get from something, and they're not going to give something away unless you give them something in return, and trying to
value transaction that goes on there psychologically.
And also rewarding them.
Right.
So I don't know if you've seen the latest sign up procedure to Trackmysubs, where yes, you do the same thing, you select your subscriptions first, but as you go through, the moment you finish that and you put your email address in, there's confetti that rains down from the top of the screen, and I got my little animated guy doing a dance going, welcome to Trackmysubs, right?
Love it.
Now,
but that's a reward for
it's a little dopamine shot, right? Well, like it's textbook psychology rewarding for it, and I don't hide the fact that that's what it is.
Perfect.
And then the steps that you work through, there's another reward at the end of that as well. So it's understanding that there's a whole psychological process behind this, and you have to spend a lot of time to understand how to build that story and that process into your app just to get people to use it. Yeah.
So believe it or not, we're actually working our way through the Pyrometrics framework here.
Cool.
So the Pyrometrics framework: awareness, activation, retention, referral, sharing with your friends, and finally revenue. And we've just talked about awareness. So how do people actually find out that you exist? And it sounds like PR is currently a big one, and your SEO and things. Activation, getting people to take the first step towards sharing their subscriptions and doing the sign-up process. What about retention? How does retention work for you?
Retention's a funny one, and the thing about Trackmysubs, it's one of those things that's set and forget. People load all their subscriptions in, and they start getting their reminders, and they after a while they go, I haven't paid for a subscription for a while, and the kind of the value goes down mentally. Why am I paying for this? I don't really need it. I don't go into it very often now. The alerts kind of pop through my emails, and I see more often than not that people they'll go churn. They'll quit, right?
Yep.
But it's amazing how 3 months later those same accounts will reactivate again.
Really?
And it's because, and this is conjecture on my part, is that level of comfort they were fine with, but 3 months later when those alerts stopped coming, they paid for something they forgot about. And they'll be gone, you know what, if I was still using Trackmysubs, that wouldn't have happened. And I see it a lot with people who do trials. They'll go in there and they'll put 3 or 4 subscriptions in, and then literally, because our trials are unlimited, 10 subscriptions forever, and I might see nothing for 8 months, 10 months. And then all of a sudden they're in there loading up all their subscriptions, they're upgrading to the paid version, and it's just like this instant.
There's been a trigger event there.
There's been a trigger event.
Right.
And that's really what it comes down to. It becomes this. And with the retention side, and I didn't know this at the time, but if you think about Facebook and Twitter and the other platforms, if you don't go into it for a while, they'll start prompting you with emails. Hey, someone sent you a message, you haven't done this. That's all part of that, trying to create that loop.
Yep.
And I didn't realise at the time, but my alerts were actually creating that loop, that constant contact back with the customer. Hey, your subscription for Netflix is going to expire in 3 days. You should do something about it.
Exactly. I mean, really, your business is actually leveraging the retention models of the other of the subscriptions that they're on. So it's actually super. It's actually really straightforward for you, really. Which is great, and that's fascinating. There's people who churn and come back.
Yeah, it's Yeah, unexpected.
Yeah.
There's lots of things that are kind of happening that I had no idea at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is a sort of product which is super shareable too. Do you get to track whether people are actually sharing this with their friends, or is that something that's hard to keep
So we did build a
tabs on?
feature that people could share their savings. So when you get an alert, it's got a little button there, a little thing that says, hey, did this save you money?
Yep.
And you can click on it and it loads up a page with the value of that subscription.
Promote the benefit.
And you've got an option to social share it from that point. Doesn't get used a lot. Sometimes, people will do it.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been the social sharing kind of thing that I thought it would be.
Yep.
Though it is there. I find it's more word of mouth. When people go, I've got a problem with my subscription, people are just saying, use Trackmysubs.
I think this is the thing. If you built an inherently valuable product, people want to be the friend who refers their mates the cool, valuable product. You know, it's actually just intrinsically good. It feels nice to be able to do that. So
and it's interesting too that having a paid product. So my competitor products are free, and I'm one of the very few paid products. But I found there's a massive connection between being paid and people being sticky as well. If people don't pay anything for it, they expect nothing from it, and they'll walk. If they invest some money in it, even if it's a small token, they'll actually put the effort in to use it.
What a surprise. If you don't charge anything, then people's perception is that it's not worth anything.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially in the world today where everything's free and there's this expectation that everything's free.
Yep. But then the likelihood is that, as we said, you're the product, or your data or your personal information is the product. Yeah.
Well, the data is an interesting one.
Sure.
That's starting to build now.
Yeah. Well, look, let's shift gears.
Yep.
Draw a line under the fabulous product that is Trackmysubs, and I'm really keen to hear about EXTAG. This is your latest venture, been going for 18 months.
Yep.
What is it?
So, as well as finishing up the work with Trackmysubs, I had a team of developers that I wanted to keep employed. And I was looking for another project. I thought, I can keep this going. What should I go? And my history is oil and gas, construction, and that was my space. So I had quite a good network, and I was out there talking to different people. There was a couple of opportunities to do some development, but I actually, through just purely an accident, met up with X Group. They're a mechanical services company. And Eric, my business partner, he had this idea to build this app for looking after valves in industrial space. And one of the biggest problems is when the guys go out and work on valves, and these are the big industrial valves, right?
Yeah.
They need all the information about that valve, the certifications or the documentations, the manuals, whatever it is associated with this piece of equipment. And half the time this is buried in a file structure somewhere back in the office, and they have to go back to the office, they have to dig it up, they have to print it out, they have to take it out, and it's just very kind of inconvenient. And he had this idea of, we've got apps everywhere, why can't we have an app on our phone that we could just scan a tag on the valve and get the information we need?
Yep.
So when I met with him, he had actually had an MVP made, a little prototype made out of a company of India. And he was telling me about it and was very excited about it. And so I was actually giving his company some IT infrastructure advice through a mutual friend. Anyway, so we jumped up on the board and started whiteboarding what it was and what I thought it would be. And he realised very quickly that what he had gotten made was nothing to what he really wanted it to be.
Yeah.
And he said, hey, we should partner up and build this thing. So we agreed to do a let's knock up another MVP with some different architecture. And we did that, and interestingly enough, when we did that, we had one of X Group's major clients see it and go, we'd like to use this for scaffolding. Can you adapt this for scaffolding? So we went, sure. So we tweaked a few things and made it for scaffolding, and literally within 4 months, we're running on Wheatstone and Gorgon.
Unbelievable.
And it's now been up there for 18 months now running.
Big oil and gas projects up north.
Yep, and we've now got it at a handful of other sites as well. But what's interesting is the underlying principle of having this tag attached to an item and then a whole series of forms. It's not new, right? Like, forms have been around forever, and there's a million apps out there that do forms. And I think what we've hit on is the ability to have this flexibility of how we tie forms to an item and the simplicity that we've made it so that we can respond to clients very, very fast.
Because honestly, Gabe, this is the sort of business which just sounds difficult. You know, it's a big, old school industry,
Yep.
great big long enterprise sales cycles,
Yep.
Difficult to find decision makers. Everyone's been trying to build enterprise software and form builders and all these things for
Yep.
a long time. And you seem to have stumbled across, a way in and to build a product which is actually these guys are screaming out for.
Well, the interesting thing, I put it down to a lot of the information we learnt doing Trackmysubs. So if we couldn't make Trackmysubs intuitive, easy to use, nice to look at, where the customer wanted to use it, then it was dead, right? No one's going to sign up to it, no one's going to use it.
Yep.
And my background is in, working for major corporate construction companies. And we design all these pieces of software in a think tank in Houston or London, and we come up with this is the new system we're going to do, and then we develop it internally, and then we push it out to 30,000 employees and go use it. And all the employees go, great, another piece of software I have to use. This is crap.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This is another thing that looks like Windows 95.
This isn't making my job easier.
Right? So the thing that I really focused on this is that we've got to make the person who's using this piece of software, we need to make their life easier.
Yeah.
So forget the corporate mandate, forget the kind of the centralized piece. We've gone from the opposite angle and say, how do we make the guy on the ground's job easier? We're not worried about what the corporate needs for their financial systems, their ERP systems. What does the guy on the ground need?
Magic.
And that's where we found out that we based it, and we've made it so simple.
Magic.
So, like, to just give you an example, our scaffolding system works on a tablet, and the buttons are like 3 centimeters by 3 centimeters big, like where they hit it. We've designed it so you can hit it with a thumb.
A big, oily, greasy thumb.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's when you're out in the field, you don't need to be fiddling through little menus. You just want a big button there that says inspect.
Yeah.
So you hit that button and you can do what you need to do.
Yeah, I love it.
And it's had a huge response. And there's no other product like it that what we're competing against. It's great.
Well done, mate. And so where is XTAG at the moment? You're flying around the world selling this to the big corporates and...
Yeah, well, we've we've got, if I look at our lead table, we've got like 100 really promising leads. We've got so many that are just, and these are all big companies. These are we just signed up another deal with a mine site in Panama.
And how are they hearing about you?
So this is where the marketing thing totally differs from Trackmysubs.
Yeah, sure.
We've got a placeholder website. Right? There's no website. We're not doing any online marketing, no SEO. This is all based on relationships. So we've coined this term called relationship farming. And all we do is we reach out to people to have meetings to talk about it, talk about the opportunity, and try to expand our network and show them what we've got and what the problem we're solving. And that is all we're doing. We're just farming relationships, and we're hiring people who have good relationship networks. And our motto is just let's build those relationships and keep expanding it.
That's what business to business is, right? It's trust.
Yep.
It's not a transaction.
100%.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, there's no shortcut to building trust either, really.
No.
No. So it's so good that you've come across that realization so early, or you already knew it. Yeah.
It's very fascinating to me because it's this combination of the tech and the way we developed it from the online world to the traditional business to business, business on a handshake, meet and greet, go and have coffees, build those relationships before you're going to get the business. And lead times are 6 months, 12 months.
Yep.
The contract we just won in Panama, we're working on for well over 12 months.
Yeah.
For that to come through. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, mate, congratulations on your second, on the way to success, at least, it sounds like. We're running out of time, and I know you've got to get on a plane in a few hours. Yep. So we're going to wrap up, but if you have one big piece of advice, I know I asked you about it about Trackmysubs, but or is there anything that you wish you had done differently that you might like to share with other founders out there?
I don't know if I'd do anything differently. I think the biggest learning thing for me is that one thing always leads to another thing.
Yeah.
The success we're having in XTAG now is 100% because of all the stuff that I learnt with Trackmysubs.
How good's
And
that?
the reason Trackmysubs happened was because I was willing to pull the trigger and just give it a crack.
Yep.
And you never know what's going to open the next door. But there's one thing for sure, that if you don't, you don't go anywhere. So
Momentum
for
is
me,
key.
that's the most amazing thing, is I don't know where we're going to end up and what we're going to end up doing, but it's going to be because of what we're doing today that's going to open the one for tomorrow.
I'm so excited
So-
for you, mate. That's really great. Yeah. And the final thing we always do, well, we're in the second episode, but that we'd like to do is a little show and tell time. So if you've got any cool thing that you'd like to share with everybody else.
I was thinking about this when you
Yeah, I
mentioned
put
it
you on the
earlier,
spot, didn't I?
and I'm going, I don't even know about a cool thing. I haven't even time to think and look at cool things.
Yeah.
But the one thing that stood out in my mind that my business and partner and I are really, really hot on is family. So we've made an agreement that, even though we are flying around and we do some silly hours at times, the 100% priority we've got is our family. We've both got young kids, and we both support each other, so that when there's something going on at school, it's no, you go, we will move meetings around.
Yep.
This trip that I've got to go to this afternoon, Eric, my business partner, had promised his family that he was going to be home this week. So I said, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. You stay home. That's what we committed to.
It's nothing
And
more
so
important. Yeah.
We're really building that culture within our organisation that the family comes first, because ultimately, if we don't have our families, we don't have anything. So that's what our real focus is, and it's been really refreshing.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
it's
look, as a
great
new
that
dad
we're just-
myself, that hits me in the feels.
And it's just-
there's nothing more important, right?
Yeah.
And it's something, as a young guy in my 20s, I wouldn't have got. You don't really understand until it happens to you. But that support and the people around you, the wider, your support network as a founder is absolutely critical.
And it's amazing the support you get from, one of our developers just had a baby recently, and to be able to give them all that support, whatever time you need, you want to work from home and do this, whatever. It's amazing how much you get support. It's like, well, people are people, right?
Yeah.
And they have lives outside of work.
Yeah.
And we really support that.
That's awesome, mate. Well, thank you. Look, thanks so much for making the time, Gabe. If people want to find out more about either of your two projects, where can they go?
Probably best just go to trackmysubs.com.
Yep.
They can just contact me through there. We can go through extag.com.au is the other one as well.
Beautiful.
But either pathway, you better reach out to me.
All right, we'll share those URLs on the text below the podcast. But thanks again. Have a great flight. All the best for the future, and no doubt we'll see you around. But thanks so much, Gabe. Appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you.
Cheers.